Well, it all started with bargain airfares from Bozeman, Montana to Europe. And then it kept growing from there until we'd booked ourselves on a 2-week tour through 7 countries. In March '99, we winged our way to Amsterdam, where we joined a tour that had already begun in London a few days before. Our destination in Amsterdam was the Ibis Hotel.
Hi, we're in Amsterdam and we're at the Ibis Hotel, and there's a little pond out in front, and look at all the fish. They look like catfish, and they must be fed fairly often by people because as I walk along here, they follow me with their mouth open. It reminds me of Punky, or actually reminds me of Alex with his mouth open because he's so hungry. Did you sleep well, Mike?
I was wide awake at 4 o'clock.
Oh, we were too.
We joined 40 other tour members aboard the Cosmos bus for some Amsterdam sightseeing. The bus was a brand new Mercedes coach and very comfortable.
I had to step in here so everybody could get by.
Our first destination was a tiny cheese and shoe factory on the outskirts of Amsterdam, where we watched a brief demonstration of cheese making.
And I use it mainly for protection. Cheese, the good things we keep ourselves. We press it 5 hours, then they go into salt 1 day. After the salt, we put them on shelves, put wax on, then it's protected. Now we start aging process. And I use it mainly for protection. In New Zealand, it's not allowed. I can see the breakfast was not that big because their question.
The cheese man asked if there were any questions, and Jackie said,
I thought the cheese was stamped made in Wisconsin.
The wood is wet.
We then saw a demonstration of making those famous wooden shoes, our clampine.
Paint them and then I sell them to Texas. Then I got them with flowers, windmill, any kind of funny color. That is for tourists from Texas. Now everybody look because I will very easy cut a total outside cover.
It's on rhythm.
Flip, flop, flop, over the tile. Her feet were flinty, but you heard her for miles.
With her pitter, pitter, patter, and pop, pop, down with her blue. And sweet, pretty, trade by and in golden shoes.
Wibbly pop, pop, wibbly pop, pop.
last stop, of course, the gift shop.
Smoked. Well,
Finding bargains.
actually, no.
As the sales rang up, the clerk sang more and louder.
And then we cruised around Amsterdam, a city of 715,000 that's situated on 70 islands and separated by 50 miles of canals and connected by 1,000 bridges.
Many people live on houseboats permanently, and the houseboats have flower boxes and chairs outside. Many of the buildings are very narrow because in the 17th and 18th centuries, houses and shops were taxed on their street front width. Lots of shops, from quaint little ones like this one to one featuring a large life-size Barbie. It was Barbie's birthday.
It's a bustling city with lots of traffic and many bicycles, but public transportation is good with many buses and trams.
The city's known for its fine diamonds. It's a diamond center. So we paid a visit to one of the diamond factories.
Can I take a pic? I think Liz Taylor's got one probably as big as one of these.
There's a lot of waste. We are losing 50% of dust during the polishing. Would you like to buy a ring here? Our polish can size from 25.
Final stop, of course, was upstairs to the showroom, where the soft sell began.
My mother told me I'd never be able to put a ring on if I would pop my knuckle. Oh,
And when they heard that Jackie was in the group, they locked us in the vault till she bought something.
Yeah, 6,000. Yeah, 6,000.
Amsterdam has a number of museums, and we visited the Rijksmuseum, which is crammed with an array of Dutch masters' art, lots of Rembrandts. On our first visit, we had visited the Van Gogh Museum.
Our local guide looked like he'd stepped right out of one of the portraits. This painting is Adam and Eve.
This is the massacre of the innocents by
Van Harlem. Van Harlem.
Van Harlem.
This is Prometheus being chained by Van Baburen. Our guide detailed the exhibits under a portrait of his look-alike, the Merry Drinker. And here's the river by moonlight.
And at this time, the priest is here with all of the ladies.
And this is Winter Landscape with Skaters by Hendrik Everkamp. And probably the most famous work in the museum is Rembrandt's 1642 militia painting, The Night Watch, the company of Captain Franz Koch.
The museum has several beautifully detailed dollhouses. This one was made in 1676. It was the dollhouse of Petronella Dunois.
Our poor children had to wait.
We took a cruise of the city's canals. I showed off my new ring.
By the time they take the VAT off, so I'm telling you.
Well, the cruise was sort of a bust. The boat broke down and we didn't get very many videos.
From Amsterdam, we headed into Germany's Rhineland.
We had a superb driver, silent and safe Armando from Italy, who guided our coach over a network of excellent four-lane highways. And our tour director, Stanka, kept us well informed.
And then we'll see the Rhine River. Rhine is very romantic. You're going to think of the pirates, you will think of the Germans, you will think of Napoleon, you will think of the legends and romance and the stories. Plus, there's so many beautiful little villages on both sides of the Rhine. You will see half-timber houses, you will see cherry trees in the background.
We left the Autobahn and passed through many German towns and villages with very old buildings. Here's our hotel in one of those little Rhineland villages, right across from the Rhine River.
Oh, and right next door was a medieval arched entrance to the older part of town.
Early in the morning, I have no idea, what, 6:15, 7?
Yeah, about 7.
Something like that.
Yeah.
This is mine.
The Rhine is Germany's longest river and flows from the mountains of Switzerland to the North Sea through the heart of Germany. We boarded a launch for a cruise down a portion of the Rhine of Legend, a 120-mile stretch through the Rhine Gorge.
The weather was chilly, so some people stayed below, but most of us were on deck to view the quaint villages, vineyards, and the famous castles on the Rhine, which include 13th century Bavarian castles.
This looks like a castle, but it's actually a railway tunnel. During World War II, Hitler had tunnels disguised as castles to fool Allied bombers. The Rhine is a very important part of Germany's national mystique, bound up with the country's history, culture, and folklore. In fact, the song that you're hearing tells the legend of Lorelei, a beautiful maiden who perched atop this cliff and lured sailors to their deaths on the rocks below. And here she is, Lorelei, sitting on a rock in the Rhine. Then back on the coach as we headed south.
So we are going to leave now the Rhineland. Did you enjoy the cruise?
Yes.
Now the Rhine level is very, very high, so we can show you the famous 7 rocks. In the middle of this river, we have 7 stones, and they call it 7 virgins, or 7 girls.
We saw another of Hitler's faux castle railway tunnels.
And we passed by a medieval watchtower as we took our last views of the Rhine. We were headed for a brief visit to the medieval town of Rothenburg, taking the Ausfahrt off the highway. That means exit. Rothenburg is one of the most picturesque towns in Bavaria, a walled medieval village without a single modern building.
There are only 11,000 residents, and most of them make a living off the tourists who wander through the crooked cobblestone streets lined with quaint shops and half-timbered houses. Or pause in the town square to view the town hall clock.
There are lots of enticing shops, many of them with medieval-style signs.
Did somebody say McDonald's? It was the only business open on the Sunday we were there.
Well, I'm disappointed. They're all closed.
It's a quaint town, though. It's Rothenburg.
A new German law prohibits merchants from selling on Sunday, so we were limited to window shopping.
Yeah, they're all closed. Look in the window.
Those are great. look at all the little Leberwurst. And none of the sausages are refrigerated. Looks like they have prosciutto, Barnwurst, blood sausage, and some things that are totally unidentifiable. As we headed toward Munich, we passed through many small towns and villages.
On the way, we made a brief stop in Cologne to view the famous cathedral, but it was too dark for any good video shots.
They were also having services that time.
In many of the cities like Munich, we saw the latest in new autos. The smart car, made by Mercedes, and so small that they can be stacked in vertical showrooms. SMART is an acronym for the designer companies and not an implication of a wise car choice.
And they can go 140 miles an hour. Our next destination was Innsbruck for a visit to this picturesque city in the Austrian Alps. It's famous, of course, for the 1964 Winter Olympics and is still a popular rendezvous for winter athletes like Jack and me.
We headed for the town square to scout out the shops and sights, including the Golden Duckei, the building with the golden roof, actually made of 2,600 gilded copper shingles. In the 1500s, it was part of a royal box for viewing spectacles in the square below. And then we headed for Venice in sunny, warm Italy. Well, a few miles later, we thought we were back in Montana. The road to Brenner Pass and the Italian Alps were just like home.
It was still snowing when we arrived at a rest stop in the Italian village of Carina.
Folks from the warmer climates enjoyed a snowball fight, and those of us from colder places enjoyed a warm drink.
Here's some cappuccino, Italian cappuccino. Here's tea. I paid 3 or 4,000 lira, which sounded very expensive, but I don't think it is.
And for a snowy afternoon, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
And we're in a little town called Carina,
Carina,
I think,
Carina.
aren't we? Carina? And up in the Italian Alps, and it's been snowing.
And I've just been to the most interesting restroom. It's a hole in the floor.
That's it, there's nothing but a hole in the floor.
That's it, with a river running through it. You want one last swig?
Well, I took that last swig and jumped aboard the bus back over the snowy roads. We passed through the Dolomites, which look like this in good weather, but this is how we saw them.
In Venice, we stayed at this hotel, which had once been a monastery. Our room had a charming view, so we snapped photos of each other gazing out at the courtyard, which was centered with an illuminated fountain.
Venice, of course, is a city of canals, giving it a refreshing absence of cars and mopeds. Citizens here make their way on foot or by boat or gondola through an ancient maze of narrow streets and winding canals. Lots and lots of gondolas.
Our group gathered on the waterfront for an orientation by our local guide.
He couldn't find the very few navigable canals, about 3 meters deep, which existed in those times. Since it was a swampy area, the waters were very shallow. And this is the reason why the refugees came here, because they were protected by the hidden canals.
The starting point for sightseeing is massive Piazza San Marco, a magnificent expanse framed all around by museums and medieval buildings, and whose most permanent residents are the pigeons. At one end of the square is the Basilica of San Marco.
This church was built in the 13th century, and everything had to be imported in here because this was sand. So they brought in marble and they brought in stones.
We were able to go inside and see the beautiful adornments. Then we went to visit a nearby glass factory where we watched a demonstration of goblet making. No matter how many times you've seen glass made, it's really a very special treat.
Now
the red is from the gold.
Gold makes the ruby.
Yeah.
So it'll be orange. Bravo, maestro. Now we go upstairs and I'll show you some of the beautiful collections.
We made a stop in the showroom where we inspected the finished product.
Let me have your little conversion so I can look at this.
Well, a bunch of us had lunch at D'Angelo's, famous for something or other. Whatever we had, it was good.
And finally he understood and he told me, excuse me, 2 o'clock. And they say Montana, and I forgot to bring that's a nice gift.
Mark Twain called the gondola an inky, rusty canoe, but tourists still pay top dollar for a leisurely trip through the city's winding canals. It was a unique and nostalgic ride, and reminded me of the barcarolle from the Tales of Hoffmann.
Have you taken a picture?
From Venice, we journeyed south into Tuscany country and a 2-day stay in Florence.
Here's the very Italian-looking view from our Florence hotel room.
Well, the weather was beautiful for our visit to Piazzale Michelangelo, an expansive square overlooking the city of Florence.
Oh, I know.
You get a good picture?
I hope so.
A lot of good video possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
The vendors were on duty, of course, selling jewelry and other souvenirs.
And this is 15,000. It's about 10 US. This is 20,000, and this is 25, and this is 20. Over there, you have this. 26, 15,
And it was here that we all gathered together for our tour group photo.
Later at Dante's Square in the heart of Florence, our tour director clued us in as we headed out for some independent sightseeing.
In the nearby Piazza della Signoria, Florence's most beautiful square, we viewed many statues like a replica of Michelangelo's David, and here's Dante in stone, and Neptune dominates an elaborate fountain sculpture. The nearby bell tower was begun in 1334, and it's covered with polychromatic marble decorations. It adjoins the Basilica, a massive cathedral that dominates the social and religious center of Florence.
Inside the huge interior are beautiful stained glass windows and elaborate fresco domes. From Florence, we took a side trip to Pisa to see the famous Leaning Tower.
Along the way, we saw the remnants of an ancient aqueduct built centuries ago by the Romans to transport water to Rome.
We approached Pisa along scenic Tuscany roads past hills covered with olive trees and grapevines.
Now this is one of my favourite parts of the last part of our journey to Pisa now, because we're in a sea of olive trees really at the moment, and these beautiful umbrella pines as well that you can see even at this time of the year. The vegetation is really beautiful in the Tuscan countryside. So you see all down below us these grey-green leaves of the olives, and then the umbrella pines also. Now we're going to make a few bends, but if you've got very, very good eyesight and you look over to the left in a moment, you may see three buildings. The first one is the Leaning Tower, and then the one in the middle is the baptistry, and the third one is the dome.
The famous tower was built to serve as the bell tower or campanile for the adjacent basilica. Construction on the 180-foot tower was begun in 1174, and it began to tilt almost immediately, and it continues to slip a tiny bit each year. It's been closed to visitors since 1990, but lots of them enjoy viewing it from the grassy expanse surrounding the tower and basilica, where they delight in snapping shots of each other holding up the tower. But gazing up, you just automatically speculate on what it would be like for it to finally topple. Well, they're trying their best to prevent that with a stack of counterweights and long cables from the tower to roofs of adjacent buildings. And visitors still marvel at the tower's odd appearance.
Where the tourist cluster, there too are the vendors, peddling all kind of stuff.
In his hands he's got the whole world.
Leonardo da Vinci t-shirts. And even Leaning Tower lollipops.
Okay, Pops.
Well, by this time, the tour gang was ready for a blowout. So we gathered for a Tuscany gastronomical dinner.
You don't make a mistake of ordering a well-done steak in Italy, as this tour member from Tennessee found out when they brought her a chunk of charcoal as a joke.
Destination was Lucerne, Switzerland, where we stayed at this hotel.
I scouted out a glass of ice water, and the nooks and crannies were adorned with various antiques and relics.
And here's my favorite, of course. Well, on the shores of Lake Lucerne, the city's become one of the world-famous resorts, with many medieval narrow streets, lovingly restored buildings, and frescoed houses, and 16th century churches. I took the boat cruise on Lake Lucerne.
Well, I stayed ashore to walk and to look at the shops.
Well, we'd barely left the dock when I spotted a bit of home. I'll bet it's a great place to stay. The lake was terribly windy, and some folks viewed the scenery from down below deck. But some of us braved the wind topside. Is the only way to get good pictures. That's the home of the CEO of Heineken Brewing Company. And this statue of Christ is carved all from wood. With a population of 60,000, Lucerne has plenty of downtown traffic and activity. But nearby there are quieter streets, often very picturesque, and with a variety of small shops. Are you finding some things, ladies?
Oh,
Really?
not really. We are losing our money.
What catches your eye here?
How about these chocolate bunnies?
Oh, look at these,
Chocolate
son.
ladies. Oh, yummy, yummy.
Oh, look! Candy.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful chocolate. Chocolate. Did you get this window here?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go right across the street here.
Okay, go in.
Okay. Don't do the back of my head. Thank you. In this place, they'll take lira.
Okay, so you got some money so you can pay me in Swiss
Yeah.
francs?
Yeah.
So I can...
That's what I have, what
Because
she
I wanna-
gave in Shane.
I saw something I wanted to buy.
Okay, do you move it to, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't think she gave me that. Cuckoo clocks are just as inevitable here as are the wonderful Swiss chocolates.
And some aspirin.
Good for you.
So I'm going to make it, maybe.
Could I have my hair look cute?
We found ourselves out after dark, and our tour leader gave us our traveling orders for the morning.
Tomorrow morning, for the last time, our good old wake-up call, 6:15. 6:45 breakfast, and your suitcases outside, please, and 7:30 is departure time for Paris.
As we left for the long drive to Paris, we grabbed a farewell glance at Lake Lucerne.
That's why we will ask you. 7:40 out of the goal, yes, and you will be leaving hotel about 6 or 6:15. I will tell you tonight. Charles de Gaulle is on a motorway, and you will leave about 6:15.
After staying at a monastery, villas, and a pension in Paris, we ended up at the Holiday Inn. Then we rolled out for our tour of the city.
Armando guided our big coach through the bustling Paris streets, dodging the same old taxicabs, as the song goes. And here's the Seine. And the Saint-Louis Dome houses the tomb of Napoleon.
Paris has many beautiful parks and fountains, and we enjoyed them. And here's the Louvre, the world's largest museum, former residence of kings, and now the home of the Mona Lisa.
And the Arc de Triomphe, commissioned in 1806 by Napoleon. We drove down the Champs-Élysées, the famous boulevard lined with luxury shops, boutiques, and embassies. And the Eiffel Tower, of course, the most famous landmark of Paris. Built by Gustave Eiffel for the 1889 Paris Exposition, it weighs 9,000 tons and rests on 4 large pillars. Elevators take visitors to its 3 levels, occupied by numerous bars and restaurants.
We didn't make it to the top, and we were content, though, to admire it from below.
I tell you what, I thought I had a photo, and then we wasn't paying attention.
The Eiffel Tower's been threatened with destruction several times in the past, and in 1960, a British con man even sold it to a scrap metal dealer.
Notre Dame Cathedral was begun in 1163, but it wasn't completed until 1361.
And our local guide shared her narrative about the cathedral as we looked up at its many spires, gargoyles, statues, and flying buttresses. Near Notre Dame, there's a medallion in the pavement called the 0 point, showing distances to various places in France. Our guide said that according to legend, if you stand on the 0 point, you'll return to Paris one day.
Step on it, you will come back to Paris once more.
Oh, yes. I'm coming back.
Now assured of our return to Paris, we headed off to explore on our own.
Yeah. Did you see these? Hi. We made a purchase, just one, but it was a big one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
After lunch, Jackie and I had more time to explore, such as here at the Palace of Vendôme Square.
We're in a wonderful square where they have all of the very, very famous stores. The Chanel, they have Chanel, not only the perfume, but the clothes, Van Cleef and Arpels, Rolex watches, and that's all they have in the store. And they told us when we came that we should bring our string bags, and here I am with this tacky bag. You don't see anybody coming out of Chanel with a bag like this. Did I get that one wrong?
We wandered past the American Diner, perhaps a reflection of how the French regard our pop culture.
Nearby, we encountered the big Paris department store, Galeries Lafayette. It's lavish and glittering, but not quite as impressive as Harrods in London.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Tu vas pas les casser, c'est
Ah, mais il m'a
c'est pas gentil, je vais te la mettre.
Alors attends, je te fais un nu là-bas, attends.
She did take off the 10%.
We had our own personal shopping guide who left us as soon as she sensed we weren't going to spend a bundle.
I promised them 10% and she takes full price.
Madame, on vous met des petites pochettes rafraîchissantes à la lavande.
Here's something I've always wanted to do: have coffee at a Paris sidewalk cafe.
Now tell me.
It's okay. It's okay. It was five francs for cream, which I didn't know. It was 54 francs for the coffee. Jack, have you ever before paid, was it $14 for 2 cups of coffee? This will perk me up though.
We were right across the street from the Paris Opera, which opened in 1875 and is still one of the world's largest live performance theaters. It seats 2,000 and has a stage capacity of 450 actors at any one time. It's adorned with many statues. And of course, it was haunted by the infamous Phantom of the Opera. But today, I think the Phantom was on a holiday.
Our group converged from many directions, and we talked about what we had seen and shared a lot of information about Paris.
I was trying to explain to him. I said, I couldn't understand why my mother never catalog of jewelry until we were all out of the house. And then she began to buy. She would pick out this and she'd pick
And later we headed out for more sightseeing, passing the rows of sex shops, even one that said Jack and Jackie's Sexy Lingerie.
We were at the Montmartre in the famous left bank, and then we rode the funicular up to the top of the hill for very special views. At the top is the Basilica of the Sacred Heart.
And it's a good spot for night views of the City of Light.
The main square is a very popular place for artists, and indeed, the Montmartre was the home of many 19th century artists such as Toulouse-Lautrec.
We bought this print of the Moulin Rouge, and shortly afterwards, we passed the real thing as we cruised around Paris at night.
Can you please have a cameras ready?
I'm taping.
It is not yet, but we will be driving shortly through Palace of the Louvre. You haven't seen the Museum of the Louvre this morning. So that's why Armando will drive through the palace. You can see that pyramid, glass-covered pyramid, which is very pretty.
Yeah, it's kind of a pretty building all the way up.
So you will see on the left the pyramid, because Sorbonne University is here, and people used to speak Latin in the past. Everything was built, properly at the longest street of Paris. So here. And even the Louvre is under restoration. That is incredible.
Our tour ended in Paris, and we gathered for a farewell dinner at a Paris bistro. Go ahead, be brave.
There are always these big
We traveled by bus to Calais, where we then took a ferry across the English Channel and then on to London.
It was an encore visit for us, so we felt right at home seeing again some of London's famous sights, like the Tower Bridge, and of course Big Ben, and the Guards, and Westminster Abbey. We rode the tube a lot. London has such an excellent underground. Then we called at the Churchill Britain at War Museum to experience London at the height of World War II, like this BBC studio broadcasting news and speeches.
The Land Army girls are here along with other women who pitched in at the home front.
I'm standing right by this fella here. His cigarette smoke is not good.
The displays are all out in the open, so you feel like you're right there back in time.
Christmas stocking. That was it.
Britain. On display are many icons of the era: toys, magazines, newspapers, and ration books. They're all here, along with war workers, air raid wardens, gas masks, and even unexploded bombs.
can window shop at typical stores of Southwark.
It was just those nasty Nazis who persuaded them to fight it. And their Beethoven and Bach are really far worse than their bite. Let's be meek to them.
At this display, London children await transportation to safer areas in the countryside. Oh, and watch out for that unexploded bomb. At the Rainbow Corner Pub, couples do the jitterbug. You can even cozy right up to the GIs. And you experience the fury of a London Blitz attack as you wander through a bombed-out department store where firemen fight the blaze and rescue victims amid broken water pipes and smoking rubble, while the bombs continue to explode overhead. And then, finally, the all-clear sounds, and you emerge safe and sound. We took a short train ride to see Windsor Castle, a landmark we'd missed on previous visits to England.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're on the way to Windsor Castle. We decided not to wear our London fogs, but instead wear something that was very lightweight because it's chilly, but I have a feeling we'll be carrying things soon.
Windsor Castle is one of the Queen's 5 properties in England, and it's where she feels most at home.
The Royal Standard is not flying, so that means the Queen is not here. She left yesterday and she'll be back on the weekend.
Where'd she go?
She didn't tell me that.
She didn't.
No.
Okay.
Windsor's the largest inhabited castle in the world. It was built over 900 years ago for William the Conqueror to guard the western approach to London. It covers 13 acres high on a hill overlooking the town.
We toured the inside, of course, but no cameras allowed. And the castle's been meticulously restored from the damaging fire back of 1992.
This was an unexpected treat.
And here I am, right in step.
How about that, boy?
The Queen often worships here at St. George Chapel, which is steeped in the history of the monarchs from 1475, and indeed some of the monarchs are buried there. Down below the castle is this charming village where we had a delicious lunch of fish and chips, and the fish was about 1.5 feet long.
Our European visit was just about over, and it was all too quick, but we discovered places that we'll return to one day, and we brought back great memories of friendly faces and fascinating places. Jackie said when she stood on the 0 point in Paris,
I'm coming back.
well, can I come with you?
Of course you can. You've got the money bags.